1565.
Your local station, WMVS.
The views and opinions presented by the host, guests, or callers on this program do not necessarily represent the positions of WMVS Radio.
Good afternoon. We do have a guest in the studio who did pay for the time. This is paid by the candidate, who is Gary Altman, running for Uniontown City Council. Gary, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, Russ. Anytime.
Yeah. So it is that time of year.
Yes,
I mean, it always seems like it's an election year anymore.
Well, yeah, it pretty much happens every year. It's between, you do your municipals, then you do your states, you do your federals, and by the time they all get there, it's that time of year.
It's that time of year. Yeah, sooner finish one election than another season starts up again. And at this point in time, we are looking, among many others, a council race for 2 seats in Uniontown City Council. And you're going for one of those.
That's correct. There's 5 council people. The mayor's on the council, and then there's 4 council people. And 2 of those, yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so nobody will get knocked out in the primary.
No. All righty. So we're going to have a fun election season, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going on, and I would tell everybody out there, there's a lot of school board races going on, and that's where the big money is spent locally, is your schooling. And there's township supervisor races up, and they're always looking for judges of elections. There are some people filed for those. They're actually an elected position, along with your township auditors and those people. So, and I know there's a lot of, when I looked at the overall ballot, there's a lot of open offices that people are even running for some townships. Now, you got to remember, Ohio Borough votes, I think, 12 people, so it's not exactly, it's not exactly a hotly contested area, although I'm sure they have their politics up there. But yeah, it gets to be that way, and there's a lot of races to pay attention to.
And just as an aside here, you mentioned a lot of seats have gone uncontested or unfilled. It's really not too late to get on the ballot for the general. You just got to wage in a write-in campaign in the primary and get the same number of votes that you.
Places only need 10 signatures to run out in Laurel Highlands, for example. You only need 10.
Right.
But Uniontown's a third-class city, even though we have a smaller population. We're like 9,000 something, and North Union is, I think, like 15, and South Union is like 12, I think, at this point in time, because they expanded.
Right. Yeah.
Which is one of the problems. I'm running for city council for a couple of reasons. Basically, I was born and raised here, and I want to try to fix the city because it's broken. And I'm trying to think strategically, not tactically. And let me give you an example. In the early 1960s, South Union asked to become a part of Uniontown. The township supervisors back then were actually willing to give up their position, which is very unusual. Uniontown said no, because back then they were like 18,000 people, 19,000. They were the big dog. Well, that was very short-sighted because the city has no place to grow. You're surrounded by all these townships. There's virtually no vacant land in the city to do anything about it. But still, that's what I'm talking about. You need strategic planning. They're in the process, the city's in the process of redoing its comprehensive plan. Now, for people that don't know what that is, the state mandates that all municipalities, everybody, county, everybody, has to do what they call a comprehensive plan to explain how you're going to do development, how you're going to grow, how you're going to control your zoning and stuff. And then underneath that, you then go on and put it together a zoning ordinance or a subdivision, a land development ordinance. So the city's in the process of redoing their overall comprehensive plan.
And they need to do that like every 10 years,
I
think
it's every 10 years it's required to have them look at it and revamp it. And they're doing meetings around the city. I went to one last night over at the East End Community Center, and unfortunately very few people showed up. But there were some good suggestions about what to do to help things. I'll give you one good one. Was somebody said we need cameras in certain areas, particularly in some of our public parks and things, to make sure that. But I've checked on that multiple times over the years, and I believe there's enough money, or at least to get it started, enough money in the confiscated funds from the district attorney's office countywide and/or state funds that they can get otherwise to do that. And that's something the city needs to look at. There are certain places I think where if they put some cameras, it would help make people feel safe, if nothing else, which is important. One of the things I think we need to do is control some of that. We got rid of the nuisance bar up at the end of Gallatin Avenue, but they all moved across town, as I understand it. I won't mention where, but they've a lot of people in my Rolodex, so to speak, that I could call to get things done with. But the city in the last year or so has done quite a bit better. They have a person who is now technically working with the Redevelopment Authority, but is doing a lot of grant work and doing a lot of this type of strategic stuff. And so far, everybody's pleased with the job she's done. There's a lot more she could do. She was at the meeting last night. We were talking. She has plans to do a lot more. And if she gets the cooperation of City Council and the Redevelopment Authority, she can do that. I told her last night, I said, hey, I'm all for it. And I think there's actually, if we can give her some more job titles, there's a lot more she can do.
Okay.
And the city also has a full-time zoning officer at this point, who has not been on the job that long. But they've needed somebody for years and years and years. And the last time they actually had one, City Council was completely ineffectual. This City Council is better than what they've had in the past. I'll give them credit for that. And that they're getting started with that. There's plans to tear down 6 or 8 buildings. They actually tore 2 junk houses down on Murray Avenue just very recently, which needed to be done. There's like 3 more over there. It's taxes. Well, the Democrats complain about it too, and everybody feels the pinch on that. You don't want to get rid of city services because that's important, but by the same token, the city's taxes are as high as the school district's, give or take $1, literally. And why would you move to the city or develop anything in the city when you can go 2 blocks and be in one of the townships and pay thousands less? My back fence is South Union Township. If I go over my back fence, I reduce my taxes, I don't know what per year, but probably $3,000 or $4,000. So we need to do something about that, and that has just inhibited the growth of downtown. They did have a sale down there. They sold the old Fayette Bank building for $2.9 million, which I thought was astronomical. Some investment group from Boston bought it, and I'm not too sure they knew what they were doing when they did it, because I'm not too sure that building was worth that, but I was very happy to see it. Yeah.
And I'm happy for the person that sold it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know them very well.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for them. It's an older couple which now can be retired into this. Are you using this as a tax write-off? Because the old Integra Bank building got in trouble because they had he had the word doctor in front of his name, but I don't know if he was actually like a PhD doctor or doctor, but he didn't do anything with the Integra building. It was going south. And a few years ago, when I was president of the Bar Association, we had a office there, and we knew that the building was going south, and it was going to be a real problem over the winter. Well, back then, the city didn't step in to do anything. We contacted the city, said, you can step in, you got to winterize this building. It'll cost you a couple $1,000s. Other than that, if you let it go and turn into a derelict building, it'll cost you $1 million to tear it down, and it's right on the main corner of town, Beeson and Main Street. Well, luckily, poor, and the city's poor, they tend to give you a little more grant money. Which is good. Now, we need to go get it. We need more money for tearing down old derelict buildings and money for growth and development. And there's some things we need to take advantage of. I don't know what the city's relationship with South Union is, but they just put that new rec center in the old OC Class lumber building right there by Bailey Park. I mean, it's across Pennsylvania Avenue from Bailey Park, and I don't know whether the city made a deal with them to use anything, but I certainly think that we should avail ourselves of those resources. They've had a place out at the South Union Township building, which is not that far out of town, but this is like in town.
Right there.
A lot of people can walk to it. It is South Union's, but I think there's some way we can work out something. Right now, a lot of the people, I believe, are parking in Bailey Park. And it seems to me we could either shut that off or charge them for it, or do something,
or have some kind of reciprocal agreement.
As far as I'm concerned, if they just let our kids, and they can limit it to kids if they want, high school, 18 under, something like that. Kids use be a part of what they're doing in the South Union Rec Center, because they're not exactly growing population anymore either. Fayette County's down to, 125,000, 126,000 people. But I do think economically we're doing much better. I know, rush hour 5 o'clock, you can't get out Main Street.
Yeah.
That didn't used to be. And
It's a 10-minute rush hour now as opposed to 5 minutes that it used to be.
Well, you haven't lived in town that long. It used to be zero. It used to be nothing. Even when you had a lot more people, it was nothing. But anyway, I'm looking at some things like that. I mean, we're not filing sewer liens. I think we can do stuff like that. They're not filing garbage liens, although they're now. And they need to stop doing what a lot of the politicians did before. They do the street improvements. They go down your alley. They'd put a half an inch of asphalt down. It looked great for the election season, but by the next winter it was all gone, potholed or whatever, because you can't put a half an inch a top on a road. Things like that. There's flooding at the bottom of my street, Derrick Avenue, and PennDOT actually made it worse by putting solid. They had grates on it. They got rid of the grates and put solid steel over Derrick Avenue. I understand why they did that. That actually is better for them on the road, but it doesn't let the water drain away. But you need to go back up to, excuse me, back up to the Dove Drive area, to Craig Meadows area, and look at what's up there. I don't think the stormwater management pond at the Uniontown Shopping Center is working. I think all the pipes are clogged or something.
Okay.
So I mean, I think there's a lot of things can be done if the city will start doing things. I don't know what we can do to help the budget, but I'm going to certainly look at that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to look at the sewer agreement with the sewer plant, because I know there's a lot of criticism years ago that South Union wasn't paying its fair share. I don't know if that's true or not, but all the South Union sewage goes into the Uniontown plant.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
And you say you don't know because you're not in a position that allows you to find that information out. Once on council, you have a little bit more pull, a little more sway to be able to get those figures.
Yeah, although I could file Freedom of Information Act things, but I mean, I'm a practicing lawyer, and I'm still trying to practice. And when you get old like me, if I get elected to office, I'll be 76 when I get sworn in. I like to think I'm still moving along pretty well, but still, I'm not what I used to be, and I don't have time. I can't work 18 hours a day anymore. So I've never really got into that, because I know there's still a lot of resentment around about the former mayor Ed Fike's operation, and I'm hopeful that they've gotten rid of a lot of that. There's still one holdover on that who's running for election this time around, and I would hope that, without naming any names, I would hope that I can get elected at least over that person. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of concerns. I know that a lot of people are concerned about the crime in the city, which is mainly related to drugs. I think there's a lot more coordination we can do between our police department and the state police and the district attorney's office. We haven't had a drug sweep around here in years. Mm-hmm. Wow, I'm trying to think of how long it's been. 20, 15? Been a long time since they busted some of the major dealers around here. And that's not our only problem. But that would help. Yeah.
So what, you've talked about a little bit of taxes too high and is a detriment to, attracting new businesses, new residents.
Well, even fixing up what you have, yeah.
So other than addressing taxes, what else can be done in the short term to make Uniontown, more appetizing, more appealing?
A lot at all the landlords, because we have 60% of the city's rentals,
if not more.
If not, no, it's about 60, I think, something like that. It may be more, but I thought it was about that. But I was talking with Crystal yesterday about that, and she said some of these landlords don't even know how to throw the tenants out if they don't do anything. Well, as a lawyer, I can tell you that it's very simple. You can go to the magistrate; they'll give you the forms. You can fill them in yourself, and if you do it by the book, which is not very difficult, the instructions are pretty easy. The maximum amount of time somebody can stay in a rental when they violated the lease, if you go straight to the magistrate, is 45 days. And at the end of 45 days, you can get the county sheriff, to come over with a bunch of deputies, pick up all their stuff, put it on the curb, and throw them out. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many landlords know that. I'm all for driving out the trash. And we can argue about what trash is, but my point is that you need to get rid of that. You're never going to get rid of drug use. You're never going to get rid of prostitution. Mm-hmm. You're never going to get rid of crime. But you can certainly push it out of your town. and make it go someplace else.
Sure.
One of the big complaints I hear from South Union and North Union about maybe having a regional police force is, well, we don't have any crime. You have all the crime. Well, that's not true. But if we push it out of the city, where's it going to go? North Union and South Union. So, I and there's things we can do. And I'm not trying to criticize our police department. I'm just saying I am sure there's some things we can do because there's a lot of things that our police department can't handle. I ran across what people said were 2 drug dens and 1 house of prostitution. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. And in one of the cases, it was supposition as to what was going on. That may have been just some neighbor being whatever. But still, I do think that there's a lot of stuff we can do. And we have a full-time paid fire department, which is great. And I don't know what you do. If you go volunteer, you got a real bad problem because you need something like 200 hours of training every year to be a volunteer these days. And a lot of people can't do it. And a lot of volunteer companies are way down on their number of personnel they have. Or that are willing to work with them. I'm not in favor of getting rid of people enough, so they have a problem in getting people.
Well, because you see that almost every month at council meeting where they're accepting the resignation of one officer and hiring another one, and the one that resigned has only been there for 6 months.
Yeah,
and he's going else, or she is going elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to Fox Chapel. They pay them about $110,000 or $20,000 a year up there.
Yeah,
and their force isn't as big as ours. But I happen to know that because my sister-in-law was on the Fox Chapel Council for a while. But, that's a high-end neighborhood in Pittsburgh, and they can afford to pay. We don't have $500,000 houses. Well, we might have a couple in the city, maybe, but most of our places are,
yes.
$50,000, $100,000. And I don't know what can be done, council, to go along with me because of X, Y, or Z. I think it'll benefit the city because we need long-term thinking, and it hasn't been long-term thinking. Not the current council, but, some of the past council has just been, wow. Without naming any names, one of the last council people who's no longer there was the dumbest human being I ever met that wasn't mentally retarded, and I've said that multiple occasions. He was a very nice person, but asking him to make any sort of a serious decision about, what salary scale to set for your police department or should we do this or do that, they were just worthless. And point of fact, I can tell you for a fact that person caused the city to have at least one major lawsuit, which cost the city $100,000. I'm trying to think of what the amount was. Just because they did something that they shouldn't have done and should have known not to do.
Okay.
But they're not there. That's not the current group. I'm not talking about the current people. Excuse me. I'm rambling on too much. People can't keep up because those places are expensive to keep up. We have some development. As I say, the Dollar General store that went in on Collinsville Street was an improvement. But then they wanted to put another one up beside Ben Franklin School, which ran into a lot of opposition. And I think rightly so, because they were talking about going out into the residential neighborhood behind it. I have no problem with the Dollar General going up at that location if they were to do everything and keep it oriented toward Morgantown Street.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I don't know what they're going to do. They have permission. They do have permission to build. There's a lot of rumor floating around like that, but they do have permission to build. But I don't know that they're going to do it because that permission is a year and a half old now. I mean, and the place burned and was junk for a long time, and they've finally got part of it cleaned up, and hopefully they'll be able to sell it and put something in there that attracts business, employs people, and so forth. We'll see.
Enhances the tax base.
Yes, enhances the tax base and is a nice building. And, we lost Chick-fil-A, I understand, but maybe they can stick something in there. In fact, that probably wouldn't have been a bad place to put a Chick-fil-A because it is, I say, the busiest corner in town. But I'm not so sure they had enough space there for that. But,
yeah, well, if you look at what is going in, they definitely wasn't enough space there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's one of the problems. The city doesn't have space. There's a few vacant places around the city's trying to charge these people for it. I understand they're trying to recoup some of their costs for doing that. But my comment is, give it to them cheap, people. Because otherwise it just sits there. Somebody has to take care of it and blah, blah, blah. And like anything else, like the housing authorities discovered years ago, they in the 50s and 60s, they started building these giant behemoth places, and people had no interest in it. They just lived there, and even though they were concrete structures, they destroyed them. But when they started giving people a skin in the game, I guess the way you'd call it, about
ownership or
something like that, people started to take care of the place for senior housing projects. I'm sorry, but we got too many of them now, and I think we're going to run into a situation where some of them are going to end up being half empty. Our population base is changing. We are losing population, countywide losing population, because of the death of the older people, and the young people are moving out of town.
So, the population is not just Uniontown; it's county, as you mentioned. The city recently, I guess you could say, in partnership with the county, got grant money. It has to do with the Sheepskin Trail, but it'll be with new.
Yeah, when possible, absolutely. We should use state money, federal money, any money we can get, any reasonable, solid partnership. I mean, nothing should be off the table. In years past, I know some of the one councilman in particular, every time a new idea came up, he'd say, well, you don't want to get involved in that. It was like, give me a break. No, anything we can do. And the Sheepskin Trail improvements will help the city. I'm hoping the city has the money to implement its share of it, because every time the federal government gives somebody a grant, there's always a few dollars that aren't included in the grant, and local people have to pony up the money. So I'm hoping that works. I don't look for the Sheepskin Trail to bring in a lot of tourists to the city. I really don't. We're not the Allegheny Passage.
No.
We're not hiking, although you could get on the Sheepskin Trail and hike to D.C. But it will help the city. No question about it. Yeah, we should pursue as many of those as we can. Long term. And we have some of that. I mean, Boeing's here now with close to 300 people employed. I understand that there's a company talking about coming in that's going to employ another 300 people that's not here, but they're looking for some place to go, and the city can benefit from that. It's not going into the plant they put up's not going into the city, but there's no reason why we can't entice some of the employees to live here or have them hire people from the city.
Right.
Western Pennsylvania does have a good, solid employee base. Most of us are all children or grandchildren of miners, coal miners, steel workers, people, the giant mess, but I have no problem with immigrants. I know there's two Mexican restaurants they're not in town actually, but they're in South Union, but you go in there and pretty much all Mexicans or somebody like that work in the place, and they work. They're nice, food's good service. They're working. They're working.
Both restaurants are packed.
They have good business, and one of the reasons is because these people are doing a nice job. Hey, I'm all for it. That's kind of people you want. But the hard part's doing that, and we have too much crime in this city and too many people that sit on the couch, smoke dope, don't do anything, try to collect some federal money to live.
So can this on that vein, Gary? And by the way, we are talking with Gary Altman, candidate for Uniontown City Council, and we have an ordinance that limits the number of Section 8 housing. Is that something that can be looked at? Is that even possible to do? I don't know. I'm just
as an attorney, I can tell you probably not. Because if nothing else, the federal government will say no, you can't do that, or we're not going to give you any more money. But I would say probably not. Just to limit Section 8 housing probably doesn't violate, Title 9 or of the the big sports world Title 9 thing or any of the civil rights laws or anything, 64 civil rights law or anything like that, because you're not picking on a protected class. But by the same token, but I don't think that, quite frankly, we don't need any of that. And I think the thing to do is to turn it down. I also know they can pay. They're going to make a profit on what the feds pay. And some of the properties don't get inspected often enough. And I think there's, like any program, it's not always perfect. And I think we're on the bottom end of that, which is a shame. The program may be working much better in other places, but I think here we need to watch what we're doing. And I was a landlord for a while. We sold our apartments, but I owned what I thought were the nice set of apartments in Fayette County. But we sold them. We got rid of them. But so I know how that works. And we never took the HUD money because I didn't want to get somebody bad in my apartment. It wasn't in the budget. So I mean, there's pros and cons to that. But when I learned last night that some of these landlords don't even know how to evict somebody, I'm wondering who's in the business.
And why?
Why? Yes. If you're going to run a business, you should run a business.
Yeah. Because at a certain point, if they're not getting their rent money, well, they're going to stop doing any kind of upkeep on the home.
Correct.
And that goes into disrepair, and so it just adds to the
It just
problem.
adds. As I've said, and I tell people this, and they kind of look at me because they hadn't thought about it. Our problem started. I graduated from Uniontown High School in 1967. We had 412 people in my class. Now they're down to, 150 or something. It's coal mines in the world in Greene County in the 1970s, but we were using continuous miners, so they didn't need 300 people with pickaxes. And then the mills closed. And now they're going to close Clairton. I hope they open Clairton back up. One of the reasons Clairton was closing was because the EPA wouldn't rule on EPA sat, Biden's EPA sat on the pollution mitigation plan that U.S. Steel spent $1 billion on and wouldn't approve it. And I'm hoping that it gets through and they approve it so we can keep Clairton open. But that may not be the only reason, but I'm thinking that has a lot to do with it. But in any event, they all left. And what happened was, the last of the parents or grandparents died. So they're in a house on some street someplace, Smith Street or whatever the heck it is. And the kids are in California or Texas or Illinois or God knows where, even close by, even in Pittsburgh. And then make a lowball offer to the person. The person would just sign it over. Things like that. And that's what started the rental push around here. That and the fact that there was no zoning enforcement for years and years and years in the county and in the city. So I'm thinking if we use some sensible approaches, we can get on the track to getting a lot of this fixed. And part of that's, we have garbage all over the place. What's the solution to that? Well, a lot of people don't pay their garbage bill, and I think we can fix that. There are ways to enforce that, even though it's a private collector. I'm thinking we got to find some way to get people to get the garbage out of the backyard of their house, cite them, and say, here, and maybe what we need to do, we know who's dumping. And if you're signed up to do it, you can take all that stuff that you can't get otherwise. The county does run a recycling program, I think, in May and October for things that you can't put at the street for the garbage guys to pick up. We need to take care of that. We need to make sure that gets published, and if necessary, make city trucks available for people to haul it out to the fairgrounds with.
And I know the city does have a cleanup day scheduled for sometime in April, I think.
File sewer liens, and there's not a lot of money in a sewer bill. It only amounts to about maybe $400 a year, something like that per building, but you can file for 5 years, which is a couple $1,000s per house. Because I know there was a lot of complaining when that was done years ago that South Union wasn't paying its fair share, and I'm not accusing South Union of anything, but I'm thinking if we look at some of that stuff. And they still have a lot of hydraulic loading on the plant. They passed the correct ordinance at this point, I don't know, 15 years ago, been a while, to get the storm drains out of the sewer, but there's still a bunch of them in the sewer. And that needs to be, I think, pushed a little harder. Okay. Part of the problem was nobody enforced anything for 20 years, at least. And I think if we can get some more enforcement, all dovetailed together.
Okay.
And as a lawyer, I could certainly look at that, and I'm willing to look at that for the city and give them my opinions. Maybe we need to change this ordinance to match this one, that type of thing. But there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. And, cooperation, and as you say, cooperation with the county, with the feds, with HUD, whatever we need to do.
Yeah.
Whatever we need to do.
So it's basically, at this point, there's a lot of November 6th, I'm thinking.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking that far ahead.
Right,
Because
Right.
the primary's a couple of months.
So if people want to get hold of you, Gary, and give you their ideas or help with your campaign, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, they could call my office. I'll either pick up the phone or you'll get an answering machine or something. That's 724-438-0910. I have an email. You're welcome to send me an email.
Okay.
But G.N. Altman, Altman, at Atlantic BB.
Okay.
Like Baker, BB.net.
Right. Okay.
Send me an email. Or whatever. Or call me, send me an email. And I'll be happy to listen to some ideas. They had a couple of good ones, as I said, that came out last night. Somebody said we should put some sort of a water park or something like that for little kids to use, maybe in Marshall Park or someplace, which is not a bad idea. The problem with the water park is, though, the water gets kind of...
Problems with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. And people forget about that. But just ask the county. They've been sued so many times they don't know what to do with themselves.
But no, it's a great idea. And you never know what idea might lead to another idea, that
I'll give you,
you know.
absolutely. I'll give you a classic example. I was Rotarian back in the 1970s when John Link, that's who did it, came in and proposed the Rotary Walk. It was his idea. And the Rotary said, okay, fine, we'll do it. I'm thinking to myself, that's the dumbest idea I ever heard. Honestly, who's going to walk? And of course, back then you didn't think that way.
Uh-huh.
And I was young. I was a young buck. My dad and my brother were architects, as was my grandfather in town here. And years ago, they did a plan to make the Rotary Walk go all the way around the city. That had all worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody did anything for a long time. Now maybe we'll get it tied together, but theoretically, you can get on the Rotary Walk and end up in Washington, D.C., at least at some point.
Yeah.
We're not through putting it all together yet with Sheepskin Trail, but that's turned out to be a great thing.
You want to see Uniontown better than what it is.
Yes.
And you think you have the ability, the vision to help with that goal.
Yep.
Yep.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I hope so. My background is such that I should have the ability to do it. Let's put it that way.
All right. Super.
So.
And I know you'll be back on WMBS in the future with Kendall.
Yes.
On her show. So
next Friday, I think.
Okay.
I don't know. I got time to knock on doors. I'm still an active practicing attorney, and I'm still living at home and taking care of this, that, and the other. And I got enough problems keeping my house up. I've got a big old house too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll be out and about. I'm going to try to make events, if nothing else. And
if nothing else, these the planning committee meetings that are taking place around town.
Yeah, as I said, I made the one last night. And as I say, unfortunately, we didn't very many people show up. You know, hey, people, this is important. Come make your ideas known because this will be a part of it, and it'll go into what the city reads, what everybody else reads. Because the people I've put this plan together know what they're doing. They've done it. Well, correct, and they did increase the setbacks. The old setbacks were such that you could barely walk between buildings, literally. And they did change the setbacks, which is a good thing. But as I said, I'd like to see when we tear a house down that they offer half the lot to one house and half the lot to the other to start putting some green space around here. I think that would be a big help. Although hopefully there won't be that many places to tear down. But yeah, you need to do a lot of that stuff, and plus when you do the zoning, you can block out areas for commercial development. And that's how you divide some of that up with your. No. But that's where the game's played, and that's why I say strategic. You need to think strategic. You need to think farther than next week. I'm hoping I can do that.
Yeah, and also just notions that clean up the city. Whether it's new garbage cans down Main Street, which it's been quite some time since they were done, and they've seen better days. Yeah, putting street lights back up.
They finally got the tracks out of not too well anyway. No, not at all. So I do think there's things we can do. They don't let you burn in the city, and there's a lot of trash that gets not trash but tree limbs. We had storm the other night. I get tree limbs in my yard. Things like that could be burned, but they don't let you burn in the city, so you have to make arrangements to get rid of that. South Union's got a compost pile. We don't have one, at least not that I know of that's workable.
Well, we do have over at the sewage center. You could take yard waste and branches. And stuff.
I heard that, but I don't think very many people use it. That's part of the trouble. Of course, you've got if 60% apartments, you've got a lot of absentee landlords.
Sure.
But we need to make sure they're not absentee.
Yeah. All right. Gary Altman, we're just about out of time here on today's show. That 45 minutes went quick. This is next. This is WMBS Uniontown. It's 3 o'clock.
CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I'm Cammie McCormick. Israel's army says it is expanding ground operations in Gaza. The offensive has sparked angry protests in Tel Aviv. President Trump is expected to sign an executive order today that begins the dismantling of the education
schools are going to do whenever we have all the money going to the public schools, but it's going towards football programs or it's going towards things that are not ensuring equitable education.
Dozens of demonstrators locked arms today in a protest at No.
And truth in America.
Prosecutors allege a former FBI agent took sensitive records and possibly exposed informant information after leaving the Bureau. Scott McFarland has the story.
According to prosecutors, Jonathan Buma was a longtime FBI agent in Los Angeles, and before leaving the agency in October 2023, they allege he printed out dozens of FBI files and that he was writing a book that included FBI sensitive information